Hey, everybody, I'm Max Bultman alongside Sean McIndoe and Frankie Corrado for another episode of the Athletic Hockey Show. I'm filling in for Sean Gentili today. Cameron Gaunce going to join us in segment 2 for a little playoff preview. But first, guys, I want this to be as seamless as possible. I want to do as Sean would want, and I know that Sean would want us to start with the Detroit Red Wings today. They lose another one last night. They play in Columbus. It's another must-win game. I feel like I've boy cried wolf my way out of being allowed to use the phrase must-win game over the last month. But they're playing another team in the same spot as them, trying to chase down a point or two gap in the East standings, in the East wildcard race. They have a lead with 21 seconds left, lose a face-off, Columbus scores to tie it, and the Blue Jackets take it in OT. I've seen this story a few times before. For you guys who have not necessarily been on every single beating pulse of this last 5 weeks, what was your first thought, Frankie?
Listen, man, first of all, going into that game, the crazy thing was one of those teams was going to have to win. Like, both of them have not been playing well, or they haven't been getting the results. And it was like, wow, either the Jackets or the Red Wings are going to get 2 points in this game. And I feel for my pal Kenny Daniels because he calls such an exciting game. And the Fantilli goal goes in with seconds left, and you could just feel like, oh my God, I can't believe it's happening again. And like the Red Wings, there's a few things catching up to them right now. And Max, you cover them very closely. But the fact that so often in games they have to play from behind, their 5-on-5 goal scoring like really hurts them, especially like, you get 2 goals from Justin Falk last night. Like, where's everyone else? Where's all the forwards that are supposed to be scoring at 5-on-5? And ultimately, like they've just found so many different ways to lose games in the last couple months that it hurts, man. Like this is a team that was at first place in the Atlantic for a decent stretch of time this season, and now it feels like it's not going to happen again. I think 10 years in a row now they're not going to make the playoffs. This is wild stuff what's going on in Detroit, and I don't know what the quick answer is.
The longest drought in the NHL now, with the Sabres finally back in. I watched that game last night, and it felt old school. This felt like what watching a big game used to feel like, where you had the cut-ins to the other scores. It wasn't just the bug popping up with the scores. They would actually come in and go, we have a goal in Ottawa. And they would go over, and it would be the Senators scoring. And you're watching the scores. You see the Flyers are ahead. The absolute worst case scenario, and yet you're sitting there going, well, at least the Red Wings are winning. They're going to get a regulation win. They're going to keep pace. And then it all falls apart at the end there, and then, of course, Columbus takes it in the shootout. I'm just going to say it, and Max, jump in, correct me, defend your turf. I think they're done. I think last night is officially the end of the Red Wings playoff push.
Yeah, I mean, the math certainly would suggest that. It's down to 6% now. It's been headed that way for a while. I've been kind of ready to call it for a couple games now here, not because of the math, but because of how it looked. The irony is last night I thought they looked pretty good for like 50-plus minutes of that game, and then they just can't get a little bit of a slow start, the bad turnover behind the net by one of their rookie defensemen last night that leads to that early deficit, which, to Frankie's point, this has been one of my kind of fixations over the last month, is that the way they're constructed, they can play with a lead. And I think that's why they got so hot from December to February, is that they had John Gibson. They were able to start these games and score first and keep teams off in the first period. And then they're kind of built to anaconda you a little bit. They're not a 5-on-5 scoring team, but they can check fairly well. That's why I think their big blue line addition was a D. You can argue it should have been the other thing to address the weakness, but when your strength needs to be goal suppression, it doesn't work when you can't chase a lead and you go down early. And they've gone down early so often. Ironically, this one, like, everyone's going to focus on the fact that, and rightfully so, that they blow the lead with 20 seconds left. The goal comes from almost the exact same spot on the ice that Kirill Kaprizov scored the eventual game winner one game earlier. And so there's some parallels there of how they're handling late games. But to me, when they play with a lead, they look like a playoff team. And when they're chasing, they look like they're in trouble. And they've been chasing for the whole last month. And that's why I agree. I think that it's just too hard of a road from this point on.
It's interesting, right? Because teams are designed to have success a certain way. Like, if you look at, I'll use an example of the Ottawa Senators, right? And we'll touch more on the playoff kind of preview in the second segment. But the Senators do the same thing over and over again, and they don't deviate from it. And I feel like for the Red Wings, where, to your point, Max, when something goes off the chains a little bit and they have to deviate from their plan, it doesn't go well for them. Like they have a hard time finding like an extra gear within their game. And a lot of the teams around them have found that. Like, Philly's found it. Ottawa's found it. Like the Bruins have certainly found it this year. Pittsburgh. Yeah, no kidding, man. Like it's just they have had such a rough go at adapting. And that's been a big issue for them. And I think the question now is like, how do you not have the question, what happens next for the Wings? Like, what is the fix? You got a lot of guys coming back, a lot of guys on term. Like your UFAs are like Perron, JVR, Hamonic. That means you're kind of locked into these guys. And I guess you could look at that and say, okay, there's something to work with there at times, and not for a day or two, longer than that. They were the first place team. So there is something there. But like, how do you get that to sustain itself? And how do you get the same group to come back next year and play different at times and be adaptable? Like that's going to be an interesting call.
And to do it all with this thing hanging over them that is now going to be there, which is October through February. Sure, they'll be fine. But in March and April, that's when they collapse. We've seen that a few years in a row now. And, to do what we are legally mandated to do in hockey media and link this back to the Toronto Maple Leafs, for years with the Leafs, it was, you'd sit there and go, it doesn't matter what happens in the regular season because they're going to choke it up in the playoffs anyways. So who cares? And they could win 15 games in a row in December and everybody just kind of shrugged. And that becomes like, like a poison that seeps into a team. And it feels like now the Red Wings are in that scenario. I've been making the call it a joke, maybe call it an observation. The Red Wings are basically now just the Leafs 1 month early, right? The Leafs in April and early May is now
terrible.
It's now that's what the Red Wings are in March and early April, and it's poison because you can't build any momentum. You can't build that feeling of this is different, right? What did we see in Buffalo, right, this year? Once they got going, this feels different. Forget the past. Forget all of that stuff. It feels different this year, and it was different. And you just can't get that feeling when the part that always kills you comes at the very end. And, I mean, you're right. The math just doesn't work for the Red Wings right now. I got a little bit excited because I saw they've got the Flyers up next, and they did beat the Flyers recently, and they're only a few points back of Philly, and they've got the tiebreaker and all of that. And I was thinking, you know what? Maybe, wait a second. They can't pass the Flyers. It doesn't matter if they catch the Philadelphia Flyers. It doesn't matter if they catch the Islanders. They have to catch the Senators because there's only room for 5 Atlantic teams. They're not catching Boston. They have to catch the Senators. It ain't happening. The Senators are gone. The Senators are in. And that means there's no path for the Detroit Red Wings. And I have no idea what you do next because, Max, you and I chatted about it in the newsletter that went out yesterday before this game. What happens next to Steve Yzerman? And you said something very interesting, which was, you said, I think for the first time in 7 years, you can envision a scenario where Steve Yzerman is not the GM next year.
Right. And this is not like gang up on the Red Wings. This is the reality of the results that they have delivered basically from the Olympic break onward. And like, excuses have been eliminated for the Red Wings. You can't say that, oh, we were so injured. It's not the case, man. They have the fewest man games lost out of any team in the NHL this season. Going into last night's action, 76 man games lost. That's dead last. Like they have been the healthiest team in the NHL. And to put that into context, the Buffalo Sabres, who are cruising in the Atlantic, They have the second most man games lost this season, 409 games. Just think about that for a second. Like, you can't blame injuries. You can't say that, oh, we lost Larkin for 2 months, or we lost Raymond, or we lost, like, you've been really healthy in comparison to everyone else who has found a way. So it, like, a lot of this, your GM, like, yeah, you want to bring up the GM. He went and got a defenseman. Like, he went and got a goaltender, and the goalie played really well for a lot of the season. Like, we can have conversations about the coach and the GM. And I think Dean Evison was on a show yesterday, and he kind of said it best. Like, hey, coach gets a lot of credit when teams win, maybe too much credit, and coaches take a lot of heat when they lose, and maybe it's too much heat. Like, ultimately, there was some moves made to help bolster this team, and the players that are on the ice, like, there's not a lot of excuses for what's happened.
Yeah, and there's a little nuance in that they have guys who are playing, but they're clearly not right. Like, Dylan Larkin had his best game since coming back from injury, I thought, last night, but he still doesn't look like Dylan Larkin should. The thing is, when we mentioned Pittsburgh earlier, we mentioned Ottawa, like, these are teams that are playing through the exact same amount of injuries as the Red Wings are, and they are finding a way. And what that tells me is the Red Wings do not have a deep enough team to make up for it when their top guys are even off by a little bit. If Dylan Larkin is playing at, let's say he's playing at 60%, the other guys have not elevated to make up for that missing 40% or even really close to it. And I'm not making the big guys blameless in all this either, right? Like, Larkin's 5-on-5 year was struggling even before he got hurt. But I think it's a factor for him. It's a factor for Raymond. It's a factor for Cobb. But that's what teams are. You got to pick up the guys who are struggling when they're struggling. The Red Wings have not done even close to a good enough job of that. Sean, you mentioned the Leafs a month early thing. I didn't know whether to tell you sniped me on that, because I've been sitting on that one for a couple weeks, or if I should send you a thank you note because I didn't have to be the one to bring it up. I think that's a huge psychological problem now going forward. And you talked about what's next. This is the conversation we've had about the Leafs every year for the last 5 seasons, is when you know that there's this boogeyman at the end of the season and no one's going to buy into anything next year. People were reticent to buy into anything this year. It took them being tied for the top of the Eastern Conference in late January for people to buy into it this year. And to see the rug pulled in the most dramatic fashion yet, like it has been this year, I don't know what would have to happen by next February for people to be back all in next year, not worried that this same haunting is going to occur again. And that makes a really, really hard situation to manage. You don't know whether you should try to run it back and fix where it went wrong. You don't know if you should try to make massive changes. That clearly hasn't gone very well for the Leafs this year, right? I mean, they tried the scapegoat angle. Scapegoat angle didn't turn out to be such a good idea in Toronto. So they're in the worst place you can be as a team. And it's going to be an interesting offseason, and yet no one's going to buy in, even if they do it exactly how everyone draws it up.
It is, because I've said this with the Leafs before. The scariest scene in the history of movies, I believe, is that scene in Mulholland Drive, if you've seen it, where the guy sits down in the diner and he explains in detail what he is afraid of. And then they finally get up and they go around the corner, and what's waiting for him? Exactly what he said. You're sitting there psychologically thinking it's going to be a surprise. There's going to be a twist. They're going to do. No, they deliver exactly what he said. And that's what makes it terrifying. And that's what keeps happening to the Leafs, and it's what keeps happening to the Red Wings. And the thing is, with Detroit, this team is they've got a bunch of great young talent coming, but this doesn't feel like a team that is ascending the way that, for example, a team like Anaheim, another team that's collapsing late in the season. But this is a team that is clearly on the way up. And even if Anaheim finishes losing 10 in a row and they get swept in the first round, that'll be brutally disappointing based on where they look like they were going to be a few weeks ago. But the season is still a success. Mm-hmm. And you can say that in Anaheim. You can say that in San Jose and a few other places. I don't think you can say it in Detroit. No,
Detroit doesn't have Leo Carlsson or Cutter Gauthier.
Well, exactly. And I think the thing with Anaheim, if you want to draw comparisons, because let's use the Leafs again. The year that they made the playoffs the first time in that whole, Cruz tenure, right? 2016, 2017. It was like, I think Jeff Veillette coined this term. Hey, the Leafs are actually good. We weren't expecting them to be that good. And so, yeah, there were some flaws with the team. You were going to have to fix things defensively. But man, you had some firepower and you had an extra gear that maybe you didn't think you had. And now at that point, It was like, okay, let's round it out. Let's get them to buy in defensively, and we'll have some success long term. Now we know 10 years later that it never really played out that way. And if you're the Ducks, you have to take your sample of this year and look at it and say, the ponies can fly. Like Cutter Gauthier up and down the ice, ton of shots, rush chances. He's great. Leo Carlsson could be the next big thing as far as centermen go in the NHL. But if we've learned anything, especially now after losing 4 in a row, and goal differential can tell us a bit of a story, at some point, the way you play is going to come back to bite you. And it will still be considered a success for the Ducks because, yes, they have exceeded expectations, but they will have something different than Detroit. They will have the base of the thoroughbreds who can run out there and produce big time. And now you just have to get them to pick their spots a little better and buy in defensively and just get everything a little more polished that way. Whereas the Red Wings have to consistently try and extract as much as they possibly can while knowing that we have to play so structured and so detailed in order for us to have this success. It's like two sides of a coin, just totally different. And it does feel a little, it feels rosy for the Ducks, even though they've lost 4 in a row now.
Well, they've lost 6 in a row. It's just they got that one OT loss in there, right? So It makes it look even a little better.
Right.
Five of the 6 losses now in regulation. I agree with you, though. Like I still take a generally positive view of this season. I mean, even if they were to miss the playoffs, that would be a blow to that. But so many good things have happened for them. Beckett Seneca being every bit worthy of the number 3 overall pick is a big deal for these guys. You have to go through something like this at some point. And Anaheim may be able to do it and still make the playoffs and still make it all just this, hey, blip on the radar thing. I don't see them going far in the playoffs. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit more when Cameron Gaunce joins us. But you're right. This is still a positive year for the Anaheim Ducks. Is it a positive year? And Sean, you mentioned GM changes earlier. Is it a positive year for the New Jersey Devils? No, but they are a team that, Tom Fitzgerald is out. You're going to have a search there. This does feel like one of the more ready-made potential turnaround jobs in the NHL.
It does, but it also, think about this. Every time Jack Hughes gets hurt, maybe this is just anecdotal. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure someone will tweet at me, but every time Jack Hughes gets hurt, the team goes on a nosedive. Like this year, it was middle of November when he had that freak accident with his hand, and then they had, they have a terrible December, and they had a horrible January. And that's too long of being below 500 to be able to withstand everyone else who was winning around you in the Eastern Conference. And I think that just goes to show you, there needs to be more than just, hey, if Jack's not here, we can't do it. Nico Hischier is a really good player. He's actually played well, but there needs to be more there. And I think they have the Devils with their roster construction have a lot of duplicates, lot of redundancies, and they're just role definition is a real thing. It's the reason why we see, teams like the Panthers have had so much success because what everyone brings to the table and everyone can find a role within that group, and it's not third and fourth lines that are playing minimal minutes because they just can't provide that for you. And the Devils, again, one of those teams that's injured a lot. That seems to be consistent year to year. But I don't know. I just kind of come back to their roster construction and I say there's a lot of duplicates. There's a lot of the same there, and that's something that would need to change with a new general manager.
And I gotta say, I'm starting to be out on the Devils because I'm like everyone else, right? We saw for years they weren't very good. They were doing the rebuild, getting the top picks, having some lottery luck. Great. That's part of the process. And then they had that year where, they start off slow and everyone's chanting fire Lindy and everything. And then suddenly they catch fire. They look great. They win a round and everybody goes, all right, boom. The New Jersey Devils have arrived. And this is a team that is not just a playoff team, but a Stanley Cup contender. And we just all kind of declared it, and we all bought in. And there were lots of valid reasons to believe that. That was 3 years ago, right? They follow that year up. They miss the playoffs. We all go, they don't have a goalie. That was the problem. Then they went out and got a goalie. They make the playoffs. They lose in 5 games. Now, this year you come in, you go, okay, everyone's going to be healthy. It's the injuries that got them last time. It's all going to come together. And I'm guilty. I had the Devils as one of my cup favorite teams, and they missed the playoffs by a mile. We're going to be sitting there going, 3 years of this team, they have won one single playoff game. Guys, that's one game more than the 3 of us have combined to win. That's not very good. And at some point, I don't know if it's a Sheldon Keefe thing. Obviously, Tom Fitzgerald and has already paid the price. I did not love the Nico Hischier quote about an extension and about, anytime a guy starts talking about, hey, I'm on this team now. I get a little bit nervous about that too. So I don't know that there is a path for this team to get to the level we thought they were going to get. To get back to the playoffs, yeah, absolutely. And once you're in the playoffs, anything can happen. We all know that. But this was supposed to be if not an elite team, at least like a team that was in that top 8 to 10, where you go into the season, you go, absolutely, everything plays out right. This team can win a cup. I'm starting to wonder if we just all got out over our skis, and it was that one, the Fire Lindy year was the outlier, and everything else is this team just telling us exactly who they are, which is middle of the pack at best.
Well, the Hughes injuries are a big part of it. If they can keep him healthy, and granted, that's a massive if at this point for more than 60 games a year, that makes a big difference. I just want to see a more like true bottom 6 line for them. Like it feels like the blue line, I think they can deal from strength on, and especially they have Salayev coming. Like that's a good deep blue line, but that's one of the places, Frankie, where they have some redundancies. They have some guys that it's just too much of one thing. Trade from that. There's no free agents on that market. They should be able to trade 1, maybe 2 defensemen and get real returns this year. And whether those returns are some of these body banging third and fourth liners, but you need a real identity in the mold of the Bruins, in the mold of the Penguins in the bottom 6. They have the talent in the top 6. No, Timo Meier hasn't been as good there as you'd like him to be. Dawson Mercer hasn't really lived up to what I thought he was going to be 3 years ago, but he's still a nice player.
He's healthy. He's available. He plays 82 games a year, right? Like that's a guy you don't need to have slotted too high in your lineup. Right. And Sheldon Keefe's a good coach. He is a good coach. I do believe that. And he wants to play a certain style of hockey, like up tempo. He wants close gaps. He wants to force the puck out of other teams' hands. I guess maybe where you maybe run into some things with his style of game is that sometimes they will force pucks off the boards into the middle a little too quickly, and it gets you in trouble. But that just means like you might need players that can play that style. But to your point, Max, like they don't necessarily have a lot of that scattered throughout their lineup.
Yeah. So there's work to be done for whoever takes this job, but I think that there's good bones, to use a little house hunting term there. If I'm a GM, this is a place that I think you could do a nice flip job with and come up pretty happy with it. Let's take a quick break right there. Cameron Gaunce is going to join us right after this. All right, we are back, and we are joined now by Cameron Gaunce, who joins us from TSN to talk about the playoffs. And this will be a sunnier segment for those of us who got bummed out in segment 1 as we talked about all the teams letting it slip away. The Philadelphia Flyers not letting it slip away. 15-5-1 in their last 21 now. They stay red hot with a win last night over the New Jersey Devils, who we closed segment 1 with. Right now, the Philadelphia Flyers are in a great spot. They're in a metro position, so they don't have to worry quite as much about the wild card, although splitting hairs a little bit, the Columbus Blue Jackets are still right on their heels. But the Philadelphia Flyers are red hot. They're a team that I don't have a ton of worries about right now. If you ran into them in round 1, Cameron, how nervous should the Pittsburgh Penguins be?
I think you have to be at least a little bit nervous just because of the youthful exuberance. Like already they had a youthful group, and then you add someone like Porter Martone, who I know pretty well from skating with him for a number of summers and getting to know him off the ice. He's a guy that's always going to inject energy into the lineup. You see him right away playing with Zegras, getting on that first NHL goals and overtime winner. Like that type of energy this late in the season. Like you see some teams, they're dragging a bit at this time of the season. Talk about Anaheim probably later. Some teams are dragging, whereas Philadelphia seems to be hitting their stride and reaching the top of their trajectory right now, which is obviously a great thing for that team. And for Rick Tocchet to go and potentially play against Pittsburgh in that first round, there's a lot there as well. He knows those players. Maybe it might not be as big of an advantage as some people may think with a different coach there than when he was previously there. but it's got to be a concern for Pittsburgh considering just how well, with how much excitement the Philadelphia Flyers are
There's a
playing.
couple other things too. Like Martone doesn't look and feel like a guy who's just starting in the NHL. Like it feels like he's been there for a while. He's jumped right in and he's fit seamlessly. But every year there's a conversation around who's the most underrated player in the NHL, and it's basically just a guy who's good but doesn't get enough attention. They were missing Tyson Forster for a long time this year. He had that freak injury, and he's back. And what a difference he makes. Like he's not the fastest guy by any means, but he gets around to where he needs to get around to. He's incredibly smart, and it's made a massive difference having him around. And furthermore to that, like it was the middle of March, and we've talked about goal differential already. They were like a -12, -13 goal differential. They've chipped away at that so much. Like they're a +1, and I'm willing to admit when I am wrong. There was no part of me that ever saw this like offensive outburst coming from the Flyers. Just didn't think it was there. I thought they are what they are. They're, they'll give you a good fight defensively, but they just don't have the guns to kind of outscore it. And meanwhile, like they're scoring at a clip that they just haven't scored at, I don't know, all season long. So credit to them for finding this. And I think like Forrester makes a massive difference. I don't think he gets enough love for just how savvy of a player he is.
And I think we have to give some credit to Rick Tocchet here. Rick Tocchet might be pretty good at this. You look at he left Vancouver, and there was a little bit of a cloud hanging over him based on how that went. Look at the Canucks now, and he comes in, and look, we all looked at this Flyers team coming into this year, and you said, well, they're not going to have the worst goaltending that we've seen in years again, because that's just not how goaltending works. And so you figured there'd be a room for a little bit of a bounce. And even, midway through the season, okay, these guys are hanging around the playoffs. Good for them. This will be a good learning experience. The young guys are going to get to play some meaningful hockey down the stretch. And then they'll eventually step back and they'll let the teams that are really built for the playoffs kind of come in. I guess they missed that memo because they now look like they're going to make it. And they're not locked in. They don't have the tiebreaker probably over Columbus, for example. So there's still some layer of risk, and we don't know what's going to happen in New York with the Islanders, with the coaching change there. I got to say, though, Rick Tocchet has impressed me. I didn't love the hire at the time. I kind of rolled my eyes. Here we go. It's another team hiring the ex-star player that, the fans all love, and isn't that the easy way to do it in the NHL these days? Rick Tocchet's pretty good at his job.
Yeah, it turned out he wasn't the cloud. He was the umbrella that was keeping whatever you could out in Vancouver. It's funny because like the Michkov situation has been a spot where he's kind of come under a little bit of criticism this year. But I think you look around the rest of their roster, and Trevor Zegras is having a great year under him. Like it's clearly not the case that Tocchet can't work with skilled star players. He's found a way to make it work. And if Michkov is able to get going, which I'm never going to rule out, he's that talented. You add Martone into the mix, all of a sudden this Flyers team that I think we think about as just kind of an energy and jam, that's the way they have to play team, starts to have a little bit more ways that they can beat you. Let's move gears to another team that's gotten hot lately, and that's the Ottawa Senators. They have a huge win in Tampa last night, Frankie. All of a sudden, the Senators not only look like they're going to make the playoffs, as we said in segment 1, they look like a scary team to face in the first round of the playoffs.
It's because what they do well, like they do it so consistently, right? Like the structure is such a buzzword. People use it all the time, but like they never really deviate from it. And like Cam, you can attest to this. Like you've been in a room and guys have said certain things, right? Like, yeah, we believe in ourselves in here. We're blocking out all the outside noise. And sometimes it's just words. Sometimes it doesn't really mean anything. And I'm talking about what players and coaches say to the media. Like internally, you would know like if we actually believe it or not. But they have said that so many times this year. And then something will pop up, a piece of adversity, goaltender can't play, you get thumped by the Panthers, and it's like, then they come back and they just go back to the well and do exactly what they do at a high level. And they've built such a great highlight reel of that. So I think the internal belief with the Sens that they are no different than the Lightning or the Sabres or the Canadians for that matter, and that everyone should be worried about them. Like when they kind of allude to that, I think they actually do believe it because they play like they believe it.
They do it nonstop. Like whether it's start of the season or now, they've been playing a very good brand of hockey. They just have been getting historically bad goaltending. The amount of times I've had to do hits on Ottawa Senator games where the discussion is their goaltending going to be the downfall? Can they overcome the goaltending? So on and so forth. It's happening. Like all they have to get is average goaltending. It's been said over and over again. If they're going to get that, they're an excellent team. When you talk about, Frankie just talked about structure. Well, when you lose defensemen like Sanderson, yes, he was excellent last night, but he came back from injury. Shabbat's out, Jensen's out. When you lose players like that, their ability to slot in new players to those positions is helped by just how well they play within their structure and how much they believe in what they're saying. Yes, there's certain aspects that you don't want to be dealing with, the distractions, you want to talk about them. But sometimes some of these distractions that are being had lead to good conversations within that room. There's a lot of times where if you're a leader in that dressing room, it's hard to broach certain situations. But if someone else broaches it for you and that conversation is now has to happen because of something else, then that's a conversation that's happening probably a lot sooner than it would have happened if it wouldn't. Like, for instance, what Keith Tkachuk talked about on that podcast. If that wasn't talked about by Keith Tkachuk, there's a good chance that doesn't get discussed by the players on the team. Whereas that happens, it's brought up, that now has to be addressed. So now you're able to get rid of a potential issue or elephant in the room a lot earlier than if you continue to just let it fester. So for a team that plays as well as they do, for a team that is as deep up front, when you talk about centermen, not many teams in this league can roll out the centermen that the Ottawa Senators have. They're a team that, like you said, believes in what they have. And if they continue to play this way, I don't know many teams are going to want to play them.
So let's do this. I'm going to step into the void, and I want to see who follows me. If
Okay.
anyone.
All right.
Right now, it is very likely that the Ottawa Senators are going to get the second wild card spot. They could catch Boston. It's going to be tough just because they're running out of runway to do it. And it also looks like the Carolina Hurricanes are going to finish first in the Eastern Conference because we've got this logjam with the big three in the Atlantic. So that gives us Ottawa crossing over to play the Carolina Hurricanes. I'm going to plant the flag. Give me the Ottawa Senators to beat Carolina in the first round. If that's the matchup, who's with me?
I'll go on that ride with you. Yeah,
I'm with you.
They can play the kind of game Carolina wants to play, and they can add a little bit to it too. The wild card is goaltending. That might be the most chaotic goaltending
Bingo.
first round matchup
Yes.
imaginable. But I'll ride that with you, Sean.
And if that happens, and it's Pittsburgh
further.
Flyers,
There you go.
Are
Keep
we
going.
hanging a Metro Division banner in Ottawa next year? Will we do that?
Well, okay. I think it's great, like, to have the conversation. I think Carolina, like, clearly they have had goaltending issues, and they've had issues getting past, like, the conference finals, and a lot of that has to do with the Florida Panthers and them maybe not finding the extra goal when they need it. Like, let's just not lose sight of the fact that when you play, especially in Carolina, it is no fun, man. Like, it is a horrible experience to have to go through, especially in the playoffs. There's no room. You're constantly under pressure and under duress. So as much as Ottawa's a really good team, and they can make it uncomfortable for you, I think it'll be a tough sell. Like, it's going to be a very difficult matchup. It almost feels like that's one that could go the distance and could be decided by one goal in Game 7 if it gets to that point.
The ultimate shooting team versus the ultimate shot suppression team. Like that'd be a fun match. Listen, I'm with you. I'm winning. I'm hanging that Metro Division title for sure. I'm putting that banner up because then again, once you reach that conference final against whether it be Montreal, Tampa, maybe Montreal, an all-Canadian one, just for us TSN guys, we can talk about some more Canadian teams. But again, I like that matchup. You see how the Senators play. You see how both teams struggle with goaltending. Like neither team can say, well, at least we've got the better goaltender in this matchup. I prefer the Senators centerman. Now, depth on defense, how they play in their own zone. That Keandre Miller pickup is a great pickup because of how they defend. Like he doesn't have to think as much, really. Again, no slight to him. He's got an excellent defenseman. But when you go to a system that's a man-on-man, you get to really rely on your physical attributes. And he has wonderful physical attributes. So that's helped their team. But again, Ottawa, if they can get decent, if Linus Ullmark can be better than Brandon Bussi, I don't see why not.
And you mentioned, Frankie, Carolina's a tough place to play, and it is. This is going to be the first time in 9 years that we're going to have the playoffs with a building full of Senators fans. Okay, because we had last year, but that was the Leafs. That's a different deal. Yeah. Okay, this is all Ottawa now. I think they're ready. They're going to be ready to go for that, especially if they got to sit through 2 games of everyone talking about how loud Carolina is. Look out! I feel like this is going to happen. I'm gonna call Mendez and tell him to make some banner space. Just put a little reservation card up.
Don't bother Mendez, man. He's got enough going on over there. He might be one of the busiest PR guys in the league with everything that's gone on over there. But
Ian Mendez should get a few Hart Trophy votes at the end of this year.
Yes,
you're gonna call him. He's gonna hear you say, "Hey, we were talking on the podcast." He's just gonna hang up. He's sick of hearing podcasts.
Yeah, I think my number's been blocked since January. So.
Yeah, Mendez doesn't want to hear about that. No, I think, you know what, it's a good point by Cam about like the shot suppression of the Senators and the fact that the Hurricanes, the way they play, like everything just has to go to the net. So it would be a really intriguing matchup. I'd be curious to see how it goes, man. It would be interesting.
It's the second and third best expected goal share teams in the NHL. They also might set a record for most hits finished behind the goal line on the forecheck between the two of those teams. Would be a very fun series for sure. Let's go to the West here really quick because the Vegas Golden Knights roll on. They are now 4-0 under John Tortorella. And as we're talking about teams that could be sneaky, I mean, maybe it's not sneaky for Vegas. They're star-studded. But that were sputtering for a while and now look like a nightmare matchup. Are we ready to put Vegas in that category, Cameron?
I think so. Like the big thing Tortorella talked about when he came in was he just wanted to free them up, let them play. With how few practices you have and how few opportunities he has to really teach them anything, they weren't going to change their system. That wasn't going to happen. And again, we speak to goaltending. They're, I believe, one of the best teams when it comes to expected goals against. They just haven't been getting any saves either. So if they can just create more offense and figure out a way to play with confidence, which is a silly sounding thing for such a studded team, they're going to be a demon to deal with. You watch them play of late. They're an excellent team. He seems to be really freeing up a few of their players, really understanding how they need to play, how they need to be handled. One thing that Torts doesn't get enough credit for is his ability to interact with players and his relationship building. Yes, there's going to be the instances where he's yelling, where he's demonstrative, where he's trying, but that's his way of trying to figure out which player needs which buttons pushed. I never played when I was with Columbus, but I was up for 3 straight weeks of scratches, and that involved a lot of conversations with Torts because the season before I had been with Pittsburgh and Mike Sullivan, so we had a lot of questions about kind of how Sullivan's coaching at that point. So we got into a lot of conversations, and he's a very introspective man. He does a lot of thinking when it comes to how to deal with each person. Yes, sometimes might be with a bit too heavy a hand, but nevertheless, if he can figure out how to get to all these players, which it seems like he has, then the expectations we had coming into the season with Vegas are more likely to be reached than they were previous with Bruce Cassidy.
And the thing with Torts, like I played for Torts. I played 10 games for him or 15 games for Torts. And like I would always put it this way. Like he's the first guy to tell you when you've done something wrong, but he's the first guy to go right down the bench and pat you on the back when you've done something right. Like it works both ways with Torts. Is he a short burst kind of coach? Like, yeah, it feels that way. But this is also a different situation, not based on the amount of time that he has with the team, but based on the guys that he has. Like, he didn't have this kind of firepower with Columbus, with Philadelphia. He always had to get those teams to play really, really stingy because they didn't have the super high-end skill that the Vegas Golden Knights have. So now Torts almost has to like learn about a little bit like how do I maximize these guys and let them have free reign to a certain extent, which he's doing. And the other, the big X factor is, having Carter Hart. I mean, I'm sure people still want to avoid the conversation, but like Carter Hart played for Torts before. Like this is a familiar relationship between the coach and the goaltender. And, I think if you were looking at, okay, if they played the Edmonton Oilers, let's say in the first round or at some point in the playoffs, Edmonton, based on stats, Connor Ingram would have a better goal save above expected than anyone. Carter Hart, Aiden Hill, you name it. But like Carter Hart's now won 3 games in a row. Like he's had a 900 plus save percentage over the last 2 games in a row. Like there's more potential for Vegas's goaltending to find another level than there is for Edmonton's. And the fact that Torts has all this high end skill at his disposal, I think it's a new tool that he just really hasn't had access to in quite some time in the league.
It's a good point. I mean, he usually takes over teams that need a John Tortorella style. It seems like Vegas, anyone can, I think, benefit from John Tortorella and the way that he coaches, but it's usually teams that have seemingly no other path to victory in the last couple stops for him. This is a team that I think can now do it in multiple ways. We've given so much attention to the East wildcard race that I think we've let the West one, which is quietly pretty good, go a little bit undercovered, at least on our podcast here. So we got a couple minutes here. Nashville, LA, San Jose, Winnipeg. I just want each of you to make the case for the team you think comes out of that mix.
I'll make the case for the Jets here really quickly, and I think it's the fact that like health plays such an important factor. And the big one for me is Cole Perfetti. Like he got a high ankle sprain in the final preseason game. And just never really got going. He was playing on a second line with like Jonathan Taves, and it wasn't working for a long time there. Now you fast forward, and the team is healthy, and they don't just rely on one line. Like Gabe Velarde is now playing on the second line. Cole Perfetti's healthy. Adam Lowry's not working his way back from hip surgery. And you add in the fact that you have the best goalie or one of the best goalies in the NHL still, and the Jets feel different. And I think they couldn't get to this place because of what they were up against. Sandberg was hurt. Pionk was hurt. It was just too much. It was all too much to overcome. And now, because of the, everyone else around them not grabbing it, they have an opportunity to overcome all these things. So they put themselves in a really good spot that way.
I'd have to say Nashville. Like I really like how they've been playing. Obviously, I think a lot of people have their power plays humming. Their goal scorers who needed to score early in the season are scoring now. They're getting contributions from defensemen they really weren't anticipating to be big factors this year. Their third and fourth line are producing more. Their schedule down the way isn't terrible. They've only got 4 games left. Yeah, they got Minnesota, but that's a Minnesota team that might already be locked into a potential position. And they got San Jose and Anaheim, who's on a downfall. So I like how Nashville's playing. Last night, yeah, they got a bit caved in. They won 5-0, but Annunen had to play excellent for them. Annunen and Soros have been picking up their game of late, so if they can continue that play, if they can keep pushing the way they have, you've talked about Ottawa and their belief. Well, Nashville has had a belief throughout the year that they just weren't playing as well as they needed to play. Of late, they've been playing as well as they need to play. They're a team that's hungry. They're a team that's got a lot of veterans who have been in this situation before, so they can lean on the experience they have with Stamkos, with Marchessault, with O'Reilly. They've been there, so if they can continue to push the way they have been, I don't see them not making the playoffs. I see them giving a push to the first round too.
Boy, I wish I could say the Sharks. I really do. They're such a fun team, but I think unfortunately the boring answer is the right answer here, and that's the LA Kings, the one team that we're all kind of tired of. They always make the playoffs. They always lose to the Oilers. And you're just kind of like, oh, man, are we going to do this again with these guys? And, yeah, I think we are. I mean, they're not just holding the spot down now, but let's keep it nice and simple. What does the schedule look like? 5 games left. Vancouver, Edmonton, which will be tough, and then they finish Seattle, Vancouver, Calgary. And they have to do it on the road. So, I mean, and obviously nothing's guaranteed. But that's for their next 5 against teams that are done. That should be points to get. And especially, I mean, geez, these are the Kings. I can't stand it, but I'll give them credit. They get to overtime. Every single game, they get to overtime, and they bank at least a point, and it's hard to catch a team that keeps getting to at least singles every single night. I think the Kings, I think it's business as usual. The LA Kings in the playoffs and then out in the first round, same as it ever was.
To Edmonton or to Vegas in the first round?
You know what? It's probably going to be Colorado. And that one, I mean, gee, that might be Colorado in 3, might be the prediction there.
All right. Good stuff, guys. Cameron, thanks so much for joining us. We're going to take a quick break right there. Sean and I will be back. Be right back. All right, we are back. Thanks to Frankie and Cameron for some really good playoff preview coverage. I hope I get my line right here, Sean. what have we learned?
What have we learned, Sean?
Well done. Really nicely done. I learned something from Jon Cooper. Jon Cooper had some comments after the Sabres game, and a lot of people were focusing on what he said about the penalty box and the penalty box operator and the door being open, and those were good points. But that's not what I learned. I'm going to read you the quote, and then I'm going to tell you what I learned. This is Jon Cooper talking about the officiating after that game in this heavily hyped Sabres Lightning rematch from their 8-7 barn burner a few weeks ago. And there were 13 minor penalties in the game. And Jon Cooper said, quote, "Every time you touch somebody, it's a penalty. Come on, let the teams play. That's why everybody filled this building tonight. It sucked the fun out of the game." I learned that there is such a thing as an NHL coach who is aware of the concept of fun. What a great thing to find out. I just assumed that when you get your job as an NHL coach, they hit you with the little Men in Black neuralizer, and you forget concepts like fun, entertainment, fans in the building who are there to see something other than two teams grinding it out for a 2-1 overtime game. Thank you to Jon Cooper for teaching me that there is such a thing as an NHL coach who understands the concept of fun and entertainment. Not that any of them are going to do anything about it, because they still hate us and they still want to grind the game into a dull, boring paste. But at least they know, they're vaguely familiar with the concept. I didn't know that. Now I've learned it.
To your point, like I went out to a bar to watch the college basketball national championship game on Monday. And so Michigan's going to be playing. The Tigers were on. There were at least I think there were multiple TVs in the bar that had Lightning Sabres on in Detroit, because I think everyone kind of knew there was going to be fireworks, and I kept glancing over, and every time I glanced over, there was a scrum, there was Braden Point in a pile, right? Like it was there. So there was, that is why everyone showed up. It's why everyone tuned in.
I don't even want to talk about the fact that could be a first round matchup now, because it looked impossible a couple weeks ago when they had that game. Come on. I almost said the words "come on, Habs." Oh, that would have been the first time in my life. I'm not
maybe
doing
a
that.
"Go Habs Go" something like that.
No. But I'll say you know what?
Please Habs. How about please?
I
Habs?
hope the Habs accumulate some points down the stretch. That's the nicest way I can put it, because Buffalo, Tampa, round 1. Uh-oh. I'll tell you what, good luck to the referees who have to game manage that for 7 straight games. Have fun with that.
The Habs are in the toughest spot because of the tie break there, but the fact that that's a 3-way tie with 4 games left is pretty interesting. Like Nick Suzuki, I think, is going to be on my heart ballot this year, Sean. Like he's going to be a 100-point player who is a Selke finalist. I don't know how that player is not on a heart ballot. I thought that this was a possible step back year for the Habs. It has been the exact opposite. They're on the gas. What I learned this week is that if Sidney Crosby wants to start a TB12 scam, I'm going to buy it, because this guy does not slow down. His 21st consecutive point per game season. Yes, that is all of them. I don't think he knows how to not be a point per game player in the National Hockey League.
And I'll tell you something else. We all kind of know the point per game stat, which is he is adding now to his own record, that because it was a big deal last year, and that's phenomenal. It's incredibly impressive. I'm going to throw another record at you that Sidney Crosby is chasing. It's not quite there, but he's 1 year away. If he can get there this year, and here's my question, is Sidney Crosby going to get at least one vote in awards balloting this year from somebody? I'd say yes.
He is.
I think for sure, someone's going to toss
a 5 spot.
And it doesn't even, I'm not even talking Hart Trophy, although it could be for
Lady
that. I'm talking
something.
anywhere, Selke, people that would be 21 straight years for Sidney Crosby getting at least showing up on awards ballots, 21 for 21, and he'd be one short of the record. You want to take a guess at who the only player to have gone their entire career longer than Sidney Crosby getting awards love every single season of their career? They're at 22. Sidney Crosby's one away.
Well, I was going to say Bobby Orr, but 22 rules that out.
Mm-hmm.
Lemieux?
It's not Mario because he didn't
get to 22 either. Yeah,
it's a guy that I think is I've made this case before, still arguably maybe the most underrated superstar of his generation. That's Ray Bourque.
Okay.
Every single year in and year out was on ballots, and in fact, for Ray Bourque, he was on Norris ballots every single year. Sid had to dip into the Lady Bing a couple of years, so it's I don't know if
For
it's quite
shame.
but you know what? 22 straight years. Even Ovechkin hasn't done it. You go down the list, Gretzky, all the guys that you would normally think, Yager, had at least 1 year where an injury or this or that. Not Sid, not Ray Bourque. It's pretty impressive.
I was trying to not say Gretzky because I don't think you'd ask the question if it was Gretzky. So I tried to go, is he doing a Pittsburgh symmetry thing? But that's very good. Ray Bourque. Before we go, I just want to give a quick shout out to Scott Oake. He is going to be retiring after the season. The After Hours show on April 11 is going to be the last. Scott Oake's an institution, Sean. Like, this is a one heck of a career for him.
Yeah, especially for us Canadian fans who, he's been on Hockey Night in Canada forever and sort of the face of that late game and After Hours and all of that. And I will tell you, I've never met Scott Oake, but in this media world, we all love nothing more than to sit around and have a beer and talk about each other. I've never heard anyone say a bad word about this guy, and in fact, everyone I've ever heard talk about him just glowing as to what a great guy he is, and the work that he's done, and on down the line. So all the respect in the world to Scott Oake, and just as a viewer of Hockey Night in Canada, a thank you to him for the great work that he's done year after year after year, and been such a huge part of our Saturday nights up here.
All right, that is going to do it for us. Thank you, Sean. Thanks to Frankie and Cameron as well. 3 games on the NHL slate on Wednesday: Washington and Toronto, Buffalo and the Rangers, and Edmonton and San Jose. That's a big one for the Sharks. Haley has the next Athletic Hockey Show tomorrow, along with Shayna Goldman. Enjoy the games, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and ring the bell to stay informed and catch new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And in the meantime, you can join our Discord community. We'll see you there.